So today I'm going to cover my top 3 favorite movements to do with a sandbag. Most of the people we work with at Modern Athlete are first responders, so either police, fire, military, everybody in the tactical population. And for them, the real world starts on the ground. So if they have to treat a patient or get a patient to safety or pick up a litter, all of those weights or those loads are going to be basically flush to the ground, if not all the way on the ground. So training with a barbell, doing deadlifts or trap bar deadlift is great, but that bar is elevated off the ground. So with a sandbag, you can safely train those weird, odd movements and load them properly. So I'm going to show you 3 of my favorite movements that I use in program design for the tactical population. So doing the sandbag, any type of sandbag lift, it's not just grip it and rip it. You want to have some technique to it. So the way I treat a sandbag, I competed and I grew up training more strongman implements. I competed in a couple strongman competitions and I got some coaching from some strongman competitors. So when picking up an Atlas stone or a sandbag, you're trying not to bicep curl that movement, or that implement. So what you're trying to do is straddle the implement, whether it's a sandbag or like this one is like a duffel bag, or just the round sandbag that looks like a Atlas stone. You're trying to get it in between your legs and you're trying to get your arms as straight as possible underneath it. And you're almost trying to meet your fingers underneath. So I'll show you a rep here. So this is one of my favorite exercises. Again, I'm going to show you my top 3. This first one is just going to be sandbag to shoulder. So I'm going to pick the sandbag off the ground. I'm going to put it on my lap, and then I'm going to forcefully go into hip extension and throw it on my shoulder. So again, I have the sandbag in between my feet. I'm rolling the sandbag around so I can get a good grip on it. I'm going to lift it to my lap. So I could spend all day here if I wanted to. So getting in a good position, and then I'm going to forcefully extend up and get that sandbag to my shoulder. So that's my first exercise I like to program, is just sandbag to shoulder. So again, just to recap, hands underneath, nice and long with your arms. You're not trying to initiate the movement with your biceps. You're trying to get your back nice and tight, get your arms straight, put it on your lap, readjust, and then violently use your hips and get that sandbag to your shoulder. My next exercise I'm going to show you is either a sandbag bear hug carry or shoulder carry. So the execution of how to pick it up is going to be the same way as the sandbag to shoulder. So I'm going to straddle the sandbag, get my hands in between, I'm going to put it on my lap, I'm going to bear hug it, and then you would walk either time or distance. So again, if you're a strongman competitor, most of the time the events are either distance based, where you're trying to cover a certain amount of distance as fast as possible, or it's pick up an implement and carry it for as long as possible. So that's why I really like the sandbag carry, because again, tactical professionals, they have to carry heavy weights for long distances or short distances really fast. So the second exercise is going to be a sandbag bear hug carry. So feet are in between, arms are straight. I lap it, and then I would just bring it to my chest, get a good grip, and then I would walk for time or distance. So that's my second go-to exercise. You can also do it as a high carry, sling it to your shoulder, depending on how heavy you're going, the goals of the program, but any type of carry with a sandbag. The next sandbag exercise I'm going to show you is my loading series that I'll do. So either a sandbag to a box, over a yoke, into the back of a truck, whatever you have access to. But I like sandbag loading because it forces the client or the athlete to get into extension called triple extension from your ankles, knees, and your hips onto a platform. So I do that either forward, or also I like doing 90 degree, basically where you pick it up and you have to turn 90 degrees and load it onto something, because again, we talk about real world application. A lot of what you do in the gym, especially if it's machine based, it's all in what's called the sagittal plane, which is just fixed plane. Squat is in the sagittal plane, bench press, same thing. So getting outside of that, because in the real world, you're gonna have to move in multiple planes. So I'm gonna show you one rep where I'm just picking it up as if I'm loading it in front of me, and then I'll show you another rep where I'm picking it up and I'm turning and loading it, okay? So again, execution is the same way. So I have all my checks and balances here. So I'm getting my arm straight, I lap it, back up, and then I'm as if there's a platform in front of me and loading it up towards the platform. And then the next one is going to be a 90-degree turn. So straddle the sandbag, I lift, and then I would do a 90-degree turn and load to a platform. So just to recap, first movement was sandbag to shoulder. Second movement was the carry. And the third was sandbag loading, either a forward load or a 90-degree turn. So I think sandbag training is a vital tool, especially for tactical professionals, but really for anybody. Because even if you're a parent, you got to pick up your kids off the ground. You're not always going to be in this perfect deadlift type posture. Same thing if you're in either fire, military, police. If you have to pick up a casualty, most of the time you're not going to be thinking about, oh, I got to keep my back flat just like a deadlift. It's usually just I have to get this person to safety or get them to help as fast as possible. So getting exposed to it and having the foundation in the weight room and implemented in a training program will have great carryover to the real world. Like I talked about earlier, the real world starts on the floor. I truly mean that, because a person, if they're unresponsive and they're on the ground and you have to move them, well, guess what? They're flat on the ground. They're not elevated off the floor a couple inches like a deadlift. So you still need the foundational movements of pulling things off the floor like a deadlift or a trap bar deadlift. But the sandbag can be a great tool in the toolbox to implement these type of movements into training, whether it's from a program design standpoint. I usually categorize them in like a total body lift category. So it could be done in like a tier 1 type movement, a tier 2 or a tier 3. I'll even throw sandbag carries or sandbag to shoulder or sandbag to box in like a work capacity conditioning piece. They all have their place. It just depends on how we deem them fit into the program and what the goal of the program is. But you're not always going to have this perfectly flat back especially in the real world. So you want to train and get strong in these weird positions, because that's what life is going to be. So when doing the sandbag or a D-ball, like a heavy med ball off the ground, your back is going to be slightly rounded. But you develop the foundation and posterior chain with more traditional exercises like the deadlift, like glute hams, RDLs, things like that. And then you implement sandbag to expose yourself to some of these odd positions, so you are strong in those positions when you do, God forbid, have to get in a situation where you have to use those strengths and those skills. So those are my top 3 favorite exercises to do with the sandbag. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us on social media, through YouTube, whatever you'd like, and hit like if you enjoyed this video. Thanks, guys.